Welcome to the Tea of Life podcast, where our mission is to transform every attitude of life by encouraging and equipping you to live the life you love and love the life you live. I am your host, Tiffany Thompson. Hey, and welcome to this episode of Tea of Life podcast. I am your host, Tiffany Thompson, and I know that it's been a hot minute since you've heard from me. My official excuse is that I have been taking a bit of time off in order to reflect and consider how I want to move forward with this podcast. And so, you know what that means. It probably means, yeah, you've been a little lazy and you hadn't really wanted to do much with it. But I'm going to talk a little bit more next week about some very small changes that I want to make with the podcast. So make sure you tune in and let me know what you think about what I'm going to share. But this week, I want to know what you are doing for Thanksgiving. I am hearing that there are some places that aren't allowing people to gather in groups of more than 10 people. And I want to know, is this your area, or do you have a similar but different mandate that your quote unquote authorities are trying to implement? If so, what? And if you do have this or another mandate in your area, are you planning on following it, or are you going to ignore it and do what you want to do anyway? I'm guessing that some of you could be using this Thanksgiving gathering mandate, or maybe even COVID in general, to not get together with your family for Thanksgiving or at all. And I guess that's probably okay too. Yeah, you know who you are. You're the ones who welcomed the permission to not have to see anyone anymore due to COVID. And you've probably used this quote unquote excuse for the past 8 months, haven't you? Wink, wink. Yeah, you know who you are. So just curious on another note, what kinds of foods do you usually like to eat for Thanksgiving? Are you more of a traditional foodie, or do you like to do things a little differently? Do you usually cook at home, or does your family go out and eat? And if you're not going to be having as many people to your house this year, or does that mean that you are not going to make a turkey, or you are, or like, what are you planning on serving? I want to know. When I was a kid and when I was growing up, we did a few different things throughout the years. When I was younger, we would gather at a family farm in South Georgia, and we got to run all over the place and play in the barn loft and chase the pigs and pet the goats, and it was so much fun. But I don't think that I realized how lucky I was to get to do that at the time, and I would love to be able to do that now. I would love to live on a tiny farm and even more have Thanksgiving on that farm. That would just be absolutely amazing. So then when I got a bit older, we would go out to eat. And I can't remember the names of the restaurants, but they were always open on Thanksgiving, and they would serve the traditional Thanksgiving meals. And looking back, I think those were probably my least favorite Thanksgiving meals. I mean, no leftovers, but we would always leave the restaurant and go walk on the beach because where we went was close to the beach. And then we would go shopping wherever there was a store open, if there was a store open. And I guess that part was fun back then. I don't really think I would enjoy that much now, at least not the shopping part anyway. I think I would love to go for a walk on the beach, though. I think that would be great. Probably a much needed now versus then with, the exercise that you would get by walking on the beach after eating a Thanksgiving meal. So since we've had children, we usually have Thanksgiving at our house. But this year, I think we're going to go hang out with some friends at their house, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and don't you worry, we will still keep our distance and make sure that we're safe. Or will we? Maybe, maybe not. So, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen there. So, So no matter what you do for Thanksgiving this year, I just want you to know that I hope and pray that it is amazing and memorable. I am praying that these upcoming holidays are blissful and relaxing, and Lord knows we need it. Am I right? No matter where you find yourself this Thanksgiving, Christmas, or any other time of the year, if you find yourself by yourself, know that you are not really alone. And I know it's easy for someone else to say that, and maybe not so easy for you to hear that or accept that, but there are millions of people in our exact shoes, and they find themselves exactly where you are, where I am, where we all are right now. And know that if you find yourself celebrating with family, you are not alone. Or if you find yourself by yourself, curled up in a corner crying your eyes out, you are still not alone. Sadly, there will be many people probably doing that very same thing during the holidays. And heck, there are normal days throughout the year that I find myself doing that anyway. And the holidays can be lonely for some on a regular or normal year, not just during the year of a worldwide pandemic. In case you haven't heard, we are experiencing a worldwide pandemic right now. But this pandemic can make it even worse, especially when some of the authorities, like I was speaking of before, want to induce mandates and even make it worse for us. I mean, how dare they, right? So this time of year is when depression seems to be its most real. Does that make sense? It's in its most real state, I guess I should say. And I've shared in previous episodes that I do deal with depression on some level. And I know my triggers, and I know that the highs of these holidays that we're in right now usually keep me going on a high. But as soon as everything is over, and I'm talking like Christmas Day evening, y'all, okay? I start to feel really sad. And I tend to go into a dark place if I'm not careful. And I'm really like that with any event, though. As long as I am planning the event, or if I'm in the planning stage, I am good. But the moment the event is over, I'm talking like the moment, y'all, I am instantly sad. And sometimes extremely sad. And I feel like I have nothing else to look forward to. If I'm busy and planning something exciting, I'm usually in a good place. But when it's over, I'm usually not. And I recognize that in myself. So I have to prepare myself for that letdown. And as soon as I start to feel it, I have to continue to talk my way out of it. And I have learned to share what I'm feeling with others around me and my husband and other safe people. And sometimes I just have to wait it out until it goes away and just make sure I seek out the things that I love, even if it's just drinking a fountain Coke from a straw, which I love and always makes me feel better. And I always make sure that, I stay connected and purposefully surround myself with safe people and good people. And sometimes I can counteract it by finding something else to look forward to, although I think that could be slightly dangerous as well. I don't always think that it's best for us to always look forward to the next thing. It's like I'm on a hunt for my next high. And it also means that I am not always present in the present. And I'm wishing for the future to come faster. And one thing that COVID has made me do is actually start to enjoy my downtime. And I'm learning to just live moment by moment and not always look forward to what's next. And it's been a hard journey, just like I'm sure it has been for you as well. But I try to welcome the results. I'm learning to live just in the moment, and I'm actually starting to see myself actually enjoy it more. I read this article yesterday. It was written by Mike Rowe, and I kind of thought it related to what I wanted to talk about today, and I want to share it with you. Please let me know in the comments if this article speaks to you or what you think about it. So you guys know who Mike Rowe is, right? So if you've been living under a rock and don't, Mike Rowe is a TV host. He's a writer, a narrator, producer, actor, spokesman. He's known for his work on the Discovery Channel series called Dirty Jobs and Deadliest Catch and After the Catch. He's also a brand new author of a book called The Way I Heard It, which is on sale now. And he is the host of a podcast also called The Way I Heard It with Mike Rowe, where he tells all kinds of stories from pop culture to politics and Hollywood to history. And his website says that his podcast is a series of short mysteries for the curious mind with a short attention span, which sounds pretty awesome. And I also read somewhere that he may also be a former opera singer. So, Mike Rowe, if you happen to be listening to this podcast right now, I would like for you to confirm or deny that. And, our listeners are curious. We would like to know. So, listeners, also, if you happen to know, please leave me a comment so we can all know if Mike Rowe used to be an opera singer. I think that's pretty awesome. So Mike is also an Eagle Scout, and you know that we think that is pretty cool because our son is also an Eagle Scout, and our other son is currently working on his Eagle Scout. And he's very close, and he hopes to be done with that very soon, and we hope that he is done with that very soon as well. So Mike also writes a series of articles on his website, and I'll post a link to it on the show notes so that you can be sure and go there and check them out. But just to recap and clarify, I did not write what I'm about to read to you. Mike Rowe wrote it, but I want to share it with you today because I feel that it is a powerful message that everyone needs to hear. It's called, "It's Enough to Make a Grown Man Weep." It's a response to a question he received from a listener and fan. And the letter starts out, "Hi, Mike. I think I'm depressed. I know you're not a doctor, but I saw you play one on TV once, and I was hoping you can explain why I burst into tears every few hours. I'm also wondering if you ever weep, and if so, when?" Fran Sykes. So then, in response to that letter, Mike responds, "Hi, Fran. Obviously, I'm far too manly and rugged to weep, especially in public. But I did come close last week. I was in LA for the first time since March and staying in a Santa Monica hotel. Friday morning, I woke up and walked south along the beach to my old neighborhood in the marina. It was an 8-mile walk round trip and one that I have made many times before. But this walk was different. It wasn't just the makeshift homeless encampments that stretched for nearly 2 miles along the beach, or the boarded-up businesses with their handwritten, closed for COVID signs hanging sadly in the windows. It wasn't just the joggers leaping over the slumbering souls strewn about the sidewalk like human speed bumps. It was the sense that something even more terrible had settled over the entire city, like the plastic coverings my aunt used to wrap her best furniture in. There was a film between me and everything around me, but it wasn't a protective film. It was more like a sheen, a greasy, invisible patina that coated everything and everyone, separating us from each other. It was enough to make a grown man weep. But of course, I didn't weep. Instead, I walked back to my hotel and took a hot shower. I've had many hot showers over the years after many dirty jobs in countless hotels and motels in every state. And I can tell you there are few better things than a hot shower when you really need one. But this shower was different. Somewhere between the rinsing and the repeating and the handfuls of scented soap and the rainforest shower head that doused me in a delightful downpour, I thought about those poor people living on the beach, sleeping in forts made of stained mattresses. I wondered if they ever experienced a similar shower. And as I wondered, I realized that the film was still on me and that no amount of scrubbing would get it off. That, too, was enough to make a grown man weep, though I did not. Instead, I toweled myself off, making some coffee, and checked my email. 200 new messages. Good grief! They would have to wait. I went to my favorite news sites where I learned that the election was still contested. COVID was surging, and Joe Biden was promising to institute a national mask mandate on his first day in office. Then, with just a minute to spare, I logged onto my Zoom account and recorded another long-distance episode of Returning the Favor. You'll see the episode later this month. It's a good one. A couple of college kids in New Orleans trying to save their city from the next hurricane. It gave me hope for the next generation. In fact, it nearly made me weep. But I didn't weep. Instead, I called an Uber and headed to the airport to catch a flight to San Francisco. I couldn't help but notice the driver had installed a shower curtain between the front and back seat. A literal shower curtain. It was made of thick plastic and had pink and blue ducks on it. He asked me if he could take my temperature before I got in. Sure, I said, rectally or orally. He might have laughed, but it was hard to tell behind the mask. Either way, the laser beam that bounced off my head said that I was fever-free, so we headed to LAX, where the same invisible film covered us all. Every counter stood an agent behind a plastic partition, like a banker, and every traveler wore a mask. Some wore two. I saw one woman wearing protective goggles and rubber gloves, along with an N95 and what appeared to be a welder's shield that covered her entire face. I couldn't tell if she was preparing for surgery or getting ready to pour a foundation. Either way, she wasn't taking any chances. From the moving sidewalk, I glided through the terminal and regarded my fellow travelers seated in the waiting area, each separated by an empty seat. I was struck by the fact that all of them, I mean every single one of them, were staring down at their screens. Hundreds of people, all searching for a connection, not with the people beside them, but with somebody else, someplace else. It made me sad. This new and heightened reliance on our screens. It made me wonder if the next lockdown will drive us even further apart, even as it makes us even more reliant on our plastic companions. It made me miss the days before smartphones, even as I glanced down to answer an urgent text from my office. But I didn't weep. Not even a sniffle. I just walked to my gate and stood at the window, watching the planes come and go. And as I watched, I thought of the upcoming holiday and the Mayflower. 400 years ago, 102 pilgrims climbed aboard an 80-foot boat and sailed 3,000 miles through violent seas to a place they'd never even seen, just so they could worship the God they believed in. 45 of them died along the way, nearly half. But somehow they endured. And thanks to them, we not only have a Thanksgiving to celebrate, we have a country to call home. I swear, it's enough to make a grown man weep. But I didn't weep. Instead, I considered my reflection in the window. As my plane taxied toward the gate, I was wearing my safety third mask, and the sight of it reminded me that life comes with zero guarantees. The possibility that my plane would actually arrive in San Francisco was something that no one could promise. And right there on the back of my ticket in very fine print, the risk was spelled out. No matter how many times the pilot tells me my safety was his top priority, there was nothing he could do to guarantee my safe arrival in San Francisco. Nothing. I wondered in that moment how the pilgrims felt when they boarded the Mayflower. I wonder if their captain assured them that their safety was his priority. And then I wondered, what would they make of our reaction to this virus today? What would they think of our decision to lock down our houses of worship along with everything else in order to fight a disease that might wind up killing a fraction of a percentage of the population? A disease far less deadly than the plagues that they dealt with every year. Obviously, it's not the kind of question I'd pose here, because doing so would almost certainly lead some to accuse me of downplaying the dangers of COVID. which would inspire others to compare COVID to a bad flu, and nothing more. Far be it from me to instigate a food fight between the extremes. But I will say this, somewhere between safety firsters and COVID hoaxers, there's got to be a sensible approach to living in a dangerous world that's eventually going to kill us all. That approach, in my opinion, is safety third, a friendly alternative to safety first. Safety third is not a call to take unnecessary risk. It's just another way to say, be careful out there, but not so careful that you're unable to function. It's also a good-natured reminder that nothing worthwhile in this long history of our species has ever been accomplished by those who were unwilling to assume some degree of risk. And perhaps not so gentle reminder to our elected officials that the rules and regulations they would have us follow are a lot more persuasive when they follow them too. I'm not arguing that guidelines and regulations aren't effective and necessary. I'm just saying that extreme measures often come with a long list of unintended consequences, and these lockdowns are no exception. Here's a report in Time that claims over 100 million could starve as a direct result of the lockdown. And there's a link here in the podcast. In the end, Safety Third evolved from Dirty Jobs as an attempt to remind my crew and myself that on the job and in life, safety is never really first. And those who claim otherwise were probably selling something or running for office. Safety Always was the far better bromide, but not as catchy as Safety Third, which is why you can find it upon my face today. And then he goes on to talk about how you can actually buy the Safety Third mask that he wears, and it raises money for a foundation that he is a part of. You can go to my website or his website and see the link in order to buy one of those masks if you would like to. And then he signs it Mike. Then he goes on to say, P.S. Back to your question. On the flight back to SFO, I thought of my mom and my dad in Baltimore, who are about to celebrate their 60th wedding anniversary this Thursday. They will do so alone this year, in much the same way they will celebrate Thanksgiving. I'm so grateful that they have each other, but I'm sad and sorry that I will not be there with them. Honestly, it's enough to make a grown man weep. And so I did. So I just really found that article very powerful, and I had to share it with you today. And if you'd like to get the link to this article and all the other articles that Mike has written, you can go to my episode on my website and you'll find the link there. And remember to let me know what you thought about the article and if you could relate to it or not. If you find yourself at a point of despair during or even after the holidays, please reach out to someone and please accept help. I know that throughout this pandemic, I've made a few comments about the whole "we're in this together" slogan. But one thing is true. We are not alone. We may not all be together or even in this together, but we're not alone, ever. We're not ever alone, no matter how we feel. Depression is real, and help is available to you. This pandemic can only magnify the things that we've already struggled with or even bring up new feelings that we've never felt before. If your depression is severe enough that you feel that you are at a dead end and have no place to go or even no reason to live, please consider calling someone who you know is safe. Don't call the person who you know deep down doesn't give a crap about you. Don't call the person who leaves you feeling worse about yourself when you leave them than you did when you first went to them. Call the person who leaves you walking away feeling better and more empowered than you did before you went to them. If you don't feel like you have anyone to call, please consider calling the National Suicide Hotline. The number there is 800-273-8255. I'll say it again. The number to the National Suicide Hotline is 800-273-8255. They are open 24 hours a day and are ready to talk to you right now. I have a link in the show notes on my website if you need help finding them, or you can just Google the word suicide and it will immediately pop up. We at Tea of Life Podcast, we care about you. We care about our listeners, and we care about your mental, emotional health. This is why we make this podcast. It's why we make it available to everyone, and we try our hardest to make sure that it's available on all of the streaming outlets. The holidays are hard. And right now with COVID, they're really hard. And I don't want to hear about another suicide. There is always a way out. Always. So I'm going to end it right here, guys. Thank you for listening today. I'll talk to you next week. If you like Tea of Life Podcast and you've got two friends who want to create the life that they love to live, tell them about us. Find us on your favorite social media platform like Facebook or Instagram. Also, right now before you forget, go to Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts and search for Tea of Life Podcast. Hit the subscribe button and never miss an episode. Thank you for listening to Tea of Life Podcast. We will see you next Thursday.